And soldiers, I say, the world is watching. Photographic and video evidence is mounting, and you will be held to account for your actions. We will not let atrocities slide. Those of us here, safely sitting in this hallowed hall, have a moral responsibility to respond to Russia's desecration of human life. That means humanitarian aid, like the thermal blankets USAID has already airlifted to tens of thousands of Ukrainians in need, and the recently announced $54 million in additional humanitarian assistance that will reach hundreds of thousands more. That means military support, including the additional $350 million of security assistance the United States is shipping to Ukraine. And it means holding the sole aggressor, Russia, accountable for its actions. That will take some courage from some fellow member states, and I know that. They have shown strength. By the inspiration, I would like to stress, for the inspiration, I would ask you to look to the Ukrainian people. They have shown strength, courage, and resilience in the face of Russian guns and soldiers and bombs and rockets. They also maintain the courage to sit down and talk. We welcome their continued willingness to participate in peace talks. On Friday night, darkness descended on Kyiv. Missiles attacked a sheltering city. But the next morning, Ukrainians woke up to a new citizen, a baby girl born to a mother in a bomb shelter. The baby's name is Mia. Photos of her tiny hand gripping her mother as they hid underground have inspired the world. Let us have the courage of Mia's mother. Let us have the courage of the Ukrainian people standing bravely to defend their democracy, their way of life, and their futures. Let us show them that they are not alone, that the world stands behind them, that the United Nations has a purpose, that the additional bravery of the protesters in Russia is not in vain. Let us do everything we can to help the people of Ukraine as they stand up for themselves, for their sovereign country, and for their children. Thank you.
Спасибо. Сейчас предоставляю слово представителю Албании.
Dear colleagues, Albania voted in favor and welcomes the adoption of this resolution. Formally, this short text is of purely procedural nature, but its significance is of historic proportions. Last Friday, Evita tried to lock the UN at a time when we need it most. Not anymore. Those 5 lines of the text we just adopted open the big doors of the place where the world meets, the UN General Assembly, to speak out and condemn an unprovoked and unjustified pure act of aggression. The UNGA emergency session is all about condemning an unprovoked war. It is all about upholding the UN Charter. It is about sending a clear and iron-strong message of what is acceptable and what is not, including to the Russian citizens who need to listen to the world and hear it. Russia must be stopped in its attempt to break the international rules-based order to replace it with its will. All member states, especially the small ones like mine, which constitute the majority of the UN, must remember that international law, rules, and the UN Charter are their best friend, their best army, their best defense, their best insurance. Russia's actions undermine them. It is time to learn from the past mistakes, not repeat and perpetuate them. Russia can, at any moment, come back to reason, stop the war, recall its invading troops, go back to talks, but real talks for peace, not for surrender and capitulation. But this needs lucidity, courage and wisdom, not threats for apocalypse. As we said last Friday, this is no time to stay idle or look away. It's time to stand up. Ukraine and Ukrainians are resisting. My staying и будем стоять с Украине. Thank you.
Спасибо. Я предоставляю слово представителю Франции.
Monsieur le Président, vendredi, la Fédération de Russie était seule au sein de ce Conseil pour entraver l'adoption d'une résolution coparrainée par 82 États membres des Nations Unies. Celle-ci demandait la fin de l'agression de l'Ukraine. La France n'accepte pas ce blocage. C'est la raison pour laquelle, aujourd'hui, elle a voté en faveur de cette nouvelle résolution qui demande la convocation d'une session spéciale de l'Assemblée générale. Le Conseil de sécurité reste saisi. La France restera mobilisée en son sein pour qu'il assume sa responsabilité principale du maintien de la paix et de la sécurité internationale. Dans ce contexte, le président de la République française, Emmanuel Macron, a souhaité que le Conseil de sécurité se réunisse dès demain sur la situation humanitaire en Ukraine. La France portera avec le Mexique un projet de résolution afin de garantir un accès humanitaire sans entrave pour répondre aux besoins urgents des populations restées en Ukraine. Monsieur le Président, face à ceux qui tentent d'imposer la loi du plus fort, la communauté internationale doit démontrer son unité, sa solidarité et la primauté du droit. La France se tient fermement aux côtés de l'Ukraine et de sa population. Je vous remercie.
Я благодарю представителя Франции и предоставляю слово представителю Ирландии.
Mr. President, Ireland once again strongly condemns the Russian Federation's further invasion of Ukraine, a sovereign and independent country. Since we last met on Friday, the Russian Federation has intensified its unjustified and unprovoked attack against Ukraine. Russia's aggression is causing mounting hardship and suffering for the people of Ukraine, who have shown remarkable resilience and resolve. Ireland stands in full solidarity with them today. Mr. President, this Council has a responsibility to act in the face of conflict and to respond to this grave threat to international peace and security. We have failed to exercise that responsibility. We were rendered powerless to do so in spite of the clear will of 11 members of this Council by the Russian Federation's use of the veto in a flagrant attempt to excuse its own military aggression against Ukraine, a fellow member of our United Nations. The use of this anachronistic veto in these terrible and tragic circumstances is reprehensible and undermines the legitimacy of this Council in the eyes of the watching world. However, the veto will not prevent the international community from responding to Russia's blatant breaches of international law, nor will it deter us from holding Russia accountable for its actions. Ireland voted in favour of this draft resolution to decide to call an emergency special session of the General Assembly. Ireland calls on our fellow members of the General Assembly to step up where the Council has failed, to uphold the principles of the UN Charter, to condemn aggression and to support a return to the path of diplomacy and peace. This is the very least that the people of Ukraine deserve from us in their hour of need. We cannot let them down. Thank you.
Спасибо. Я предоставляю слово представителю Мексики.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. El pasado viernes 25 de febrero, como consecuencia del ejercicio del veto, el Consejo de Seguridad no pudo cumplir con su responsabilidad primordial de mantener la paz y la seguridad internacionales, al no haberse podido adoptar un proyecto de resolución en relación con la situación en Ucrania, a pesar de contar con 11 votos afirmativos. Ante la parálisis del Consejo de Seguridad, hoy invocamos la resolución 377, Unión Pro Paz, para convocar con urgencia un período extraordinario de sesiones de la Asamblea General. Desde 1945, México ha mantenido una postura inquebrantable en contra del ejercicio del veto por parte de los miembros permanentes del Consejo de Seguridad. Como hemos sostenido en reiteradas ocasiones y hoy refrendamos, esta facultad no debería ser un privilegio. En todo caso, constituye una enorme y muy delicada responsabilidad. En consecuencia, México apoya sin ambages la convocatoria al 11º período extraordinario de sesiones de emergencia de la Asamblea General. Y como lo ha mencionado el representante permanente de Francia, convocaremos a una sesión para analizar la situación humanitaria que prevalece en el terreno y facilitar que la ayuda llegue pronto a quienes más la necesitan. Gracias, presidente.
Спасибо. Я предоставляю слово представителю Китая.
谢谢主席先生。主席先生，当前乌克兰局势急剧变化，中方已多次明确阐述在乌克兰问题上的立场，这一立场没有变化。我们认为，当务之急是各方必须保持必要的克制，避免乌克兰局势进一步恶化。中方支持和鼓励一切有利于和平解决乌克兰危机的外交努力，欢迎俄罗斯同乌克兰尽快举行直接对话谈判。同时，中方支持欧方与俄罗斯就欧洲安全问题进行平等对话，秉持安全不可分割理念，最终形成平衡、有效、可持续的欧洲安全机制。中方认为，联合国安理会要以地区和平稳定为重，以各方普遍安全为重，为解决乌克兰问题发挥建设性作用。联合国采取的行动应当有利于紧张局势降温，有利于推动外交解决，避免激化矛盾。谢谢你，主席先生。
Спасибо. Сейчас я предоставляю слово представителю Соединенного Королевства.
Thank you, Mr. President. The United Kingdom welcomes the result of this vote today. By voting in favour of convening an emergency special session of the General Assembly on Ukraine tomorrow, the members of this Council have laid bare Russia's diplomatic impotence. Russia again was isolated in opposing this resolution. But Russia cannot stop the world from coming together to condemn its invasion of Ukraine. As each day passes in this unprovoked and unjustified war, support for the people of Ukraine, their plight and their fight for freedom grows. So we urge all members of the United Nations to use their voice tomorrow to call for the immediate withdrawal of Russian forces from Ukraine and end this war. Thank you.
Спасибо. Сейчас предоставляю слово представителю Индии.
Mr. President, it is regrettable that the situation in Ukraine has worsened further since the Council last convened on this matter. We reiterate our call for immediate cessation of violence and an end to all hostilities. There is no other choice but to return back to the path of diplomacy and dialogue. Our Prime Minister has advocated this strongly in his recent conversations with the leadership of the Russian Federation and Ukraine. In this regard, we welcome today's announcement by both sides to hold talks at the Belarus border. The global order is anchored on international law, UN Charter, and respect for territorial integrity and sovereignty of all states. We are all agreed on these principles. We continue to be deeply concerned about the safety and security of Indian nationals, including a large number of Indian students who are still stranded in Ukraine. Our evacuation efforts have been adversely impacted by the complex and uncertain situation at the border crossings. It is important to maintain an uninterrupted and predictable movement of people. It is an urgent humanitarian necessity that must be immediately addressed. Taking into consideration the totality of circumstances, we decided to abstain. Thank you.
Спасибо. Я предоставляю слово представителю Норвегии.
Norway voted in favor of the draft resolution. Just 2 days ago, in this chamber, we all saw that Russia was isolated and had no support for its attack on Ukraine. Russia's action is unacceptable. Russia is wrong. Russia is the aggressor that violates the very core principles of international law that the United Nations stands for. On Friday, this Council failed its primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security. The Council's response to the breach of the peace and the act of aggression failed because of the veto by the aggressor itself. Preventing such acts is a direct responsibility of this Council. Therefore, it was necessary to reconvene today to decide to call an emergency special session of the General Assembly on this issue. Now we will take this matter to the General Assembly with the purpose of making appropriate recommendation to members for collective measures. Russia will be held accountable. The civilian population, including children, is suffering the consequences of this horrifying conflict: killings, displacement, and disappearances, fighting in and around urban areas, and the use of heavy explosive weapons, destruction of civilian infrastructure. We remain deeply concerned about the protected harm to the civilian population. Norway is on the side of the Ukrainian people and its government. We are providing further assistance to Ukraine. The Norwegian government has today decided to provide $226 million in humanitarian assistance to Ukraine. Let me conclude by reiterating that Norway insists that the Russian Federation immediately, completely, and unconditionally stops all fighting and withdraws all its forces from the territory of Ukraine. Thank you.
Спасибо. Сейчас я предоставляю слово представителю Бразилии.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, last Friday, my delegation laid out before the Council a comprehensive view of its concerns regarding the security developments in and around Ukraine. Nothing in the intervening period has led us to having had those concerns allayed. On the contrary, in fact, as we speak, the number of casualties, the human suffering, and the risks to international peace and security keep increasing by the hour. Indeed, UNHCR numbers recently spread already place the number of refugees at 422,000. We have voted in favor of the draft resolution before the Council, despite misgivings about its timing and its contribution to achieving peace. These misgivings stem ultimately from our unyielding commitment of respect for and interest in upholding the Charter and the role of the Security Council. The urgency of the situation has convinced us of the need to add the voice of the General Assembly to that of the Security Council in seeking solutions to the crisis in and around Ukraine. This in no way detracts from our firm belief that the Council, with its primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security, has not yet exhausted the instruments and mechanisms at its disposal to contribute to a negotiated and diplomatic solution towards peace. Therefore, we reiterate our call for an immediate cessation of hostilities, for full respect to humanitarian law, and for a renewed attempt within the Council for the promotion of and support to a process of dialogue between the parties involved, a role that the Council is inherently better equipped to provide in order to bring a peaceful solution to the Ukrainian conflict. The Security Council and the General Assembly must work together. As we renew our calls for an immediate ceasefire, we also appeal to Ukraine and Russia to facilitate the withdrawal of all persons who want to leave the Ukrainian territory. Brazil already wishes to express its gratitude to Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Moldova, Romania, and others who are facilitating the exit of people fleeing the conflict, in particular Brazilians and Latin Americans. Mr. President, let us be exceedingly cautious in moving forward in the General Assembly. The supply of weapons, the recourse to cyber attacks, and the application of selective sanctions, which could affect sectors such as fertilizers and wheat, with a strong risk of famine, entail the risk of exacerbating the conflict and not of solving it. We cannot be oblivious to the fact that these measures enhance the risks of wider and direct confrontation between NATO and Russia. It is our duty, both in the Council and in the General Assembly, to stop and reverse this escalation. We need to engage in serious negotiations in good faith that could allow the restoration of Ukraine's territorial integrity, security guarantees for Ukraine and Russia, and strategic stability in Europe. I thank you.
Спасибо. Сейчас я предоставляю слово Габону.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le Conseil se réunit ce dimanche dans l'objectif de donner écho au message sans équivoque de la communauté internationale contre la guerre en Ukraine. Comme nous l'avons déclaré devant ce Conseil il y a tout juste 2 jours, nous réitérons notre attachement constant aux principes qui fondent la Charte des Nations Unies et qui s'imposent à chacun de ses États membres. Nous avons également foi en la solidarité internationale et au multilatéralisme. C'est au nom de ces valeurs qui confèrent à notre charte, à notre organisation, toute sa pertinence et sa noblesse que nous avons voté en faveur de la tenue d'une réunion spéciale urgente de l'Assemblée générale des Nations unies sur l'Ukraine. Nos pensées sont à cet instant pour les innocents qui essuient les affres d'une guerre qu'ils n'ont ni choisie ni provoquée, pour ces milliers de civils qui fuient leurs maisons, leurs villes, leur pays pour trouver refuge ailleurs. Mon pays est très préoccupé par les attaques contre des civils et contre des biens publics civils et appelle à la désescalade. Nous appelons les belligérants à s'abstenir de toute utilisation ou menace d'utilisation d'armes dont les effets seraient indiscriminés. Pour terminer, le Gabon continue d'appeler à un cessez-le-feu immédiat et à la reprise d'un dialogue franc et sincère. Il est encore temps, il est toujours temps de choisir le dialogue et la diplomatie à la logique de la force. Je vous remercie.
Спасибо. Сейчас я предоставляю слово Объединенным Арабским Эмиратам.
Mr. President, the UAE regrets that the situation in Ukraine has worsened since our last meeting and reiterates its call for a cessation of hostilities. We remain steadfast in our belief that dialogue and diplomacy should be the only path to resolving differences. We therefore welcome today's news that talks may commence tomorrow morning on the Ukraine-Belarus border. This is urgent and much needed. We will work tirelessly to support efforts towards a peaceful resolution. As we conveyed on Friday, the developments in Ukraine undermine regional and international peace and security. The UAE reiterates that the protection of civilians in Ukraine is of the utmost importance, particularly as the security situation escalates. Civilians trying to reach safety must be able to leave unhindered. It is of paramount importance that necessary humanitarian aid is delivered to those in need. Space for humanitarian assistance must be preserved so humanitarian actors can maintain access to civilians. We emphasize the importance of upholding international humanitarian law and mitigating the impact of this conflict on the most vulnerable. We reiterate once again the absolute need to uphold the principles of the UN Charter, in particular respect for the sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of all member states. I thank you.
Спасибо. Сейчас я предоставляю слово представителю Ганы.
Mr. President, let me begin by acknowledging the dangerous moments we live in and noting the necessity for diplomacy to triumph over war. I therefore urge that even in this difficult moment, and as diplomatic representatives of our states, we maintain the commitment of our states to dialogue and the objectives of peace. Last Friday, because of the exercise of the veto, this Council was unable to assume its primary responsibility to act on a threat to international peace and security following the Russian Federation's aggression against Ukraine. It is time for the General Assembly to assume its residual responsibility and to pronounce itself on the matter. And it is for this reason that Ghana voted for this resolution just adopted. As we consider the resolution we have just adopted, it is important that we do so with sobriety, not only for this generation, but also for those whose blood and toil speak to us from the restless graves of the two world wars. As a condition for becoming a member of the United Nations, we have all declared to accept the obligations contained in the Charter in averment of our peace-loving nature. Today, the peace we say we love is threatened. Ghana therefore calls on all member states to participate in the emergency special session of the General Assembly in a constructive manner, to unite around the call for peace in stopping this unjustified war that has already caused the needless loss of many lives. I thank you very much for your kind attention.
Спасибо. Сейчас я сделаю выступление в качестве представителя Российской Федерации. Российская Федерация проголосовала против представленного проекта в связи с тем, что его авторы предлагают расписаться в том, что Совет Безопасности не способен реализовать свою основную ответственность по поддержанию международного мира и безопасности. При этом мы не увидели даже намека на попытку найти конструктивное решение в Совете. Ведь мы 2 дня назад заблокировали уже один проект именно по той причине, что он был однобоким и несбалансированным. Никаких новых инициатив мы не увидели. Совет ООН и Совет Безопасности создавались в послевоенный период с целью избежать ужасов новой войны. Для этого мировые державы согласились договариваться между собой, в идеале находить консенсус. И в любом случае не пытаться навязывать свои решения друг другу или пытаться игнорировать интересы кого-либо из членов пятерки. Именно поэтому в Совете предусмотрено право блокировать решения для постоянных членов. Это не привилегия, а инструмент обеспечения столь необходимого для всего мира баланса интересов, а через него и глобальной стабильности. Попытка обойти позицию России и проигнорировать ее противоречит самой основе Устава ООН. Надо не продавливать подобные схемы, а пытаться искать точки соприкосновения, как бы этого ни пытались избежать наши западные партнеры. В том числе, когда они проигнорировали наши легитимные озабоченности в связи с политикой НАТО и нарушением западными странами базовых принципов ОБСЕ о неделимости безопасности. Сейчас нужно сосредоточиться на исправлении ситуации, приведшей к кризису, который мы переживаем. Он начался не с запуском российской специальной военной операции на Украине, а гораздо раньше, тогда, когда вы 8 лет делали вид, что не замечаете преступлений украинских националистов на Донбассе. И у вас опять сегодня не нашлось ни одного слова сострадания к жителям Донбасса. Ведь именно разрушенные вооруженными силами Украины и националистами дома на Донбассе западные СМИ сейчас чаще всего беззастенчиво выдают за последствия нашей военной операции на Украине. И сегодня на этом заседании мы вновь слышим вранье и фейки, а не избирательные бомбардировки украинских городов, больниц и школ. Российская армия не угрожает мирным жителям Украины, не обстреливает мирные объекты. Угрозу для них сейчас представляют украинские националисты, фактически взявшие в заложники жителей Украины и прикрывающиеся ими как живым щитом. Есть множество свидетельств, распространяемых простыми украинцами, о том, что националисты, невзирая на их протесты, размещают тяжелую технику и системы залпового огня в жилых кварталах. Это вопиющее нарушение международного гуманитарного права, которое должно получить должное осуждение. По сути, это та же тактика, которую применяют террористы ИГИЛ. Вся ответственность за возможные последствия лежит на майданном режиме. Жителям Украины угрожает также бесконтрольная раздача радикалами и властью всем желающим, включая специально выпущенных из тюрем преступникам, оружие, которое уже стреляет в руках грабителей и мародеров. В соцсетях достаточно подтверждений этому от жителей Киева и других городов. Это демонстрирует бездумное отношение украинской власти к своим гражданам. Сейчас против России в соцсетях развязана информационная война. Поскольку свидетельств разрушения гражданской инфраструктуры российскими военными нет, за таковые выдаются украинские удары и ошибочные попадания, а также кадры и видеоролики из Донбасса, фиксирующие как раз преступления украинских националистов. Кроме того, в соцсетях размещены целые обучающие пособия о том, как снять фейки, порочащие нашу военную операцию. А всего по украинским соцсетям гуляет сегодня 1,2 миллиона подобных фейков. Призываю наших коллег не способствовать распространению подобной дезинформации, Хотя, боюсь, эти призывы вновь не будут услышаны. Сейчас я возобновляю свои функции председателя Совета Безопасности и предоставляю слово представителю Украины.
Distinguished members of the Security Council, I would like to express my gratitude to those of you who have supported the request to call the UN General Assembly emergency session. I immediately expressed my regret that once again the Rule 20 of the provisional rules of the Security Council has not been properly applied by the presidency. However, I express my relief that this rape of the institute of the presidency of the UN Security Council will be over in less than 48 hours. For those who appear to see no reason in supporting the request to have the emergency session, despite my yesterday's letter sent to all of you, but the representative of the aggressor, I would like just to tell you the following. Do you know the most often warning now in the most of Ukrainian cities? Attention, air raids, please proceed to the shelters. And I do recommend you to look at the pictures and footages of what happened afterwards, day to day, night to night. I will continue to invite all members of the Security Council to join the catharsis, this purgation of this institution that will only save this institution for next generations. Russia persists in its aggression despite the initial plan of Blitzkrieg, and it failed, and we all see it. This failure prompted the bloody and mad Russian leadership to order heavy shellings of the residential areas, critical infrastructure and storages of hazard materials in retaliation for Ukrainian resilience and resistance. It is extremely alarming that the Russian president has resorted today to open nuclear blackmail. The world must take this threat very seriously. Excellencies, now the most intense fighting occurs around the Ukrainian capital, as well as in the northeast, Kharkiv, Sumy, Chernihiv, and in the south, Kherson, Zaporizhia, Mariupol. Long-range operational and tactical aircraft, high-precision long-range weapons, multiple rocket launcher systems are widely used against the Ukrainians. Among the most telling recent examples of Russian course of action in Ukraine, missile strike on the town of Vasilkiv, which is practically a suburb of the capital. A missile hit the oil depot, causing a large-scale fire. It was also shelling in Kharkiv that damaged the gas pipeline. According to the Ukrainian Health Minister Viktor Lyashko, at least 16 children were killed since 24 February 2022, when a large-scale military aggression against Ukraine was launched. On February 26, a 7-year-old girl who had been seriously wounded during the shelling of the kindergarten son in the city of Akhtirka died. On the same day, due to the shelling and gunshots, one child was killed and 2 wounded in the National Children's Hospital Ahmadit in Kyiv. Due to threat of air raids, maternity hospitals in a number of Ukrainian cities, including Kyiv, Kharkiv, Sumy, Irpin, Bucha, to name just a few, could not operate normally. Ukrainian children are born in bomb shelters. According to the Ministry of Education of Ukraine, as of now, more than 350,000 school children have no access to education. 33 schools with over 5,500 students are closed due to severe insecurity in civil areas. Today I have brought these appalling facts to the attention of the UNICEF, asking to respond immediately to the situation, give proper qualification to the actions of the Russian Federation, and take all possible measures to stop further deaths and violence against children in Ukraine due to the blatant Russian aggression. I sent it by the diplomatic note, and I'm looking forward to work with the UNICEF on the issue. The losses of the enemy as early February 27 have amounted to nearly 4,300 personnel killed and over 200 taken as prisoners of war. The detailed information is posted by the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. Distinguished members of the Security Council, as always, Russia denies that its soldiers are taken prisoners, that taken prisoners are recognized, or the soldiers that are killed are recognized. In this regard, Ukraine has opened a hotline entitled "Come Back Alive from Ukraine" for relatives of Russian soldiers who are not aware of their whereabouts and cannot contact them. The hotline is opened by the government of Ukraine. Over 100 calls from Russian mothers were received during the first hour of its work. It is unfortunate, however, that today, pursuant to the decision of the Prosecutor General of the Russian Federation, the line and the dedicated website has been shut down. So I want to use this opportunity to read the telephone number for anyone in Russia who would like to call and ask about the killed or taken prisoners or soldiers who are taken prisoners in Ukraine and inquire about their well-being. It is 380 89 42 01 86 0. We will distribute this information after the meeting, and I hope that after I read this number, the Russian Federation and its government would not shut down the website of the United Nations. We condemn that Belarus is being deeply engaged in the armed aggression against Ukraine. Since the beginning of the Russian aggression, this country has provided its territory for Russian offensive. Today, the Ukrainian city of Zhytomyr, in fact, the airport of Zhytomyr, was hit by Iskander missiles launched from the territory of Belarus. What an invitation for the negotiations at the border of Belarus. Or was it an escalation and raising stakes by the aggressor on the eve of the negotiations? Excellencies, Ukraine filed a case against the Russian Federation at the International Court of Justice, and a request for the court to issue an order of provisional measures against Russia. We will distribute this information, and very soon, if it's not already there, it will be available on the site of the court. Ukraine seeks an emergency hearing and an order by the court that Russia must cease its unlawful attack on Ukraine. Russia will have to answer for its behavior at the World Court in The Hague. The court has jurisdiction to hear Ukraine's case and to order emergency measures on the basis of the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, so-called Genocide Convention. The Genocide Convention is one of the most important international treaties drafted in response to the horrors of the World War II and the Holocaust. Russia, however, has twisted the concept of genocide and perverted the solemn treaty obligation to prevent and punish genocide. It has made an absurd and unfounded claim of alleged genocide as a justification and pretext for its own aggression against Ukraine and violation of the sovereignty and human rights of the Ukrainian people. Ukraine's case before the ICJ will establish that Russia's aggression against Ukraine is based on a lie and a gross violation of international law and must be stopped. As the Ukrainian people continue to bravely stand against Russian aggression, Russia's lies will be exposed, and Russia's contempt for international law will be confirmed. Ukraine will bring Russia to account. I will switch to Russian. В завершение я хотел бы обратиться лично к послу Российской Федерации. На одном из предыдущих заседаний я говорил о детях и родителях, которые гордятся или стыдятся из-за поступков своих родных. Мне показалось тогда, что вы приняли мои слова очень лично. Я был бы готов взять свои слова обратно, если вы последуете примеру своего коллеги Олега Анисимова, главы делегации Российской Федерации на закрытии межправительственной экспертной группы по изменениям климата, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Сегодня в ответ на эмоциональное выступление украинской делегации, а нам сейчас сложно говорить без эмоций, он сказал, что, и я цитирую, «Те, кто видят происходящее, не находят никакого оправдания нападению на Украину». Конец цитаты. Это было сделано на закрытой части мероприятия, однако подтверждено несколькими участниками, а позже и самим господином Анисимовым. В жизни всегда есть место выбору. Например, можно остаться человеком, а можно продолжать защищать зло. И этот выбор всегда за каждым. I thank you.
Список ораторов исчерпан, заседание закрывается.
I would like to use this opportunity to distribute some information that the citizens of the Russian Federation may be very willing to receive, because unfortunately the Office of the Prosecutor General of the Russian Federation decided to block a dedicated site established by the government of Ukraine for the families and parents of the Russian soldiers killed in Ukraine or taken as prisoners of war. There is a dedicated site and a hotline in Ukraine where they can call and inquire about the well-being of the Russian soldiers. So I will just hand over these leaflets, and you will see there telephone numbers. All right, you will distribute it.
Thank you.
Because I believe it is very unjust that the parents of 4,300 killed Russian soldiers have no idea about their sons and are not able to bury them in dignity. I would also like to use this opportunity to distribute the information about our request to the International Court, where we request emergency measures to be taken against the Russian Federation in light of their actions on the territory of Ukraine. I think it was a very good session of the Security Council. I'm looking forward to tomorrow's session in the afternoon dedicated to the humanitarian needs in light of the ongoing aggression of Ukraine, against Ukraine. And we work closely with our partners on preparation of tomorrow's session.
Do you want a resolution on the humanitarian situation in Ukraine?
As I said, we work closely with our partners to prepare a meaningful discussion tomorrow on the issue.
Why is it so important to do what you've done, your move towards the Court of Justice today about the genocide question?
Well, first of all, we sincerely believe that the Russian atrocities in Ukraine mount to violation of many, many international treaties, including the one that we cite when we sent our request to the court. And I can assure you, when the war is over, and the war is going to be over, and we will win, the UN will win, the UN Charter will be defended, the perpetrators of those atrocities, including the President of the Russian Federation, will be held accountable. We always hope for the peace talks. We have always hoped for the peace talks.
Are they happening now?
I was in the meeting, as you have seen, and the latest I had a chance to verifiably check was that our delegation was trying to move towards the border, finding the safe way, because it's very dangerous to move towards the border.
Ambassador, you mentioned the situation with Oleg Anisimov at the end of your presentation.
Right.
Are you expecting any of the other members of the Russian delegation maybe apologize or do the same thing that he did?
I expect that not only the Security Council, not only the General Assembly, not only the UN as a whole, but also many, many private citizens, and especially in Russia, will go through the process of catharsis or purgation. Because by the end of the day, all Russians deserve to live in peace, freedom, and in democracy.
What do you seek from this negotiation?
Peace. We seek peace. We seek the stopping of hostilities, withdrawal of troops. We will not capitulate. We will not surrender.
Mr. Ambassador, what if the request, the Russian request, is that practically Ukraine will never be part of NATO? Well, if this is the request...
Oh, it's a long philosophical, existential thing. We can, go on in circles and in circles. You all know the answer. Why do you ask me that? I mean, you know that. You know where. Do not try to frame me using the instruments of President Putin. All right, see you all soon. Goodbye.
talk that they're trying to arrange?
No, I think just, I don't comment on what's happening in among capitals. I think we all want, a negotiation to take place. I just want to confirm to you that tomorrow afternoon at 3 p.m. we will have a meeting of the Security Council on the humanitarian dimension of this crisis. This is absolutely needed. The crisis is very deep, and I think this is what we need. We need to provide support to Ukraine. We will insist on the full respect of international humanitarian law, on the respect of Geneva Conventions, on full access to Ukraine, to the people of Ukraine, for the UN agencies, for the UN operators to do their job, because it's urgent. There are massive flows of refugees. So this is why we will have, the head of OCHA, Mr. Griffith, and we will have the High Commissioner for Refugees, Mr. Grandi, briefing the Council, and then we'll discuss. And then Mexico and France will propose a draft resolution on this issue to propose more access, more respect of international law, more respect of the Geneva Conventions, and so that's what we are doing. But we want to move quickly.
Ambassador, when are we going to see a GA vote?
Probably during the course of next week. So I don't think it will be on Monday and Tuesday. It will take a few days. So I don't know if it's Tuesday or Wednesday, but I think those
resolution? Your
what?
Resolution in the Security Council, the humanitarian resolution.
I think probably we'll vote it on Tuesday.
What about the sanction, the French section?
Ambassador, what do you make of the UAE extension? you think there's a need for the Security Council to call for safe and unhindered aid access in Ukraine?
Look, it's not yet clear what they imply with their humanitarian resolution. When we see the text, then we can at least somehow comment it. I cannot do it in advance. Let's see the resolution first.
Is there a need for supporting the population in Ukraine?
They needed support for population in Donbass a long time, but the only country that provided support basically was Russia, by the way. I'll have a press conference tomorrow. Let us talk about it when things are.
Ambassador, are you optimistic about that peace talk that they're going to have?
We're always optimistic. I don't know the results. I don't know even if they started, because I read reports that they might start tomorrow morning, Belarus time.
Ambassador, on Yemen, can I ask you a question on Yemen? You've got the vote tomorrow morning on the Yemen.
Look, I want to keep intrigue, not unfolding. You'll see it tomorrow. Let's keep intrigue at least till tomorrow morning.
Have you committed your support to UAE for that resolution in exchange for their extension?
Come on. We don't want anything in exchange, unlike some of our colleagues in the Security Council who, besides exchange, without any shame, twist arms of our Security Council members and of the Members' General Assembly to do or to vote the way they wanted, including methods which are not diplomatic.
What time's your press conference?
It will be closer to the PM meeting in the Security Council, because we have very little time, too many events tomorrow.
Ambassador, at the beginning of your career, did you expect something like this to happen as a diplomat?
Many things happened since the beginning of my career, okay? I had a long career.
Ambassador, one more question, please. Have you, please come back, one more. As president, you're not on camera there, though.
What?
Back here so we can get you on camera.
What?
As president of the Security Council this month, how difficult has it been for you to chair these meetings?
Look, I've been on recess for 2 days because of COVID, so it was just 1 week for me, but it spread, it's perhaps with the amount of events, it was more than 1 month.
How have you felt?
Fine.
With the Ukraine meeting?
This one.
Yeah, chairing all these Ukraine meetings where
Look, we are presidency. We have to keep the integrity of the office, and I'm doing what I have to do as a president.
Thanks, Ambassador.
All right, folks, we're going to lock this door. If you want to go, please go now.